Hello and welcome to Premier League All Access with me, Sam Matterface, talkSPORT's chief football correspondent Alex Crook and former Sunderland and England left-back Micky Gray. We're at the home of the champions as we look back on the Premier League season. Here's what's coming up on the show. Is it a mark of just how good they are that none of us really thought there was much chance yesterday that the tide was going to turn?
It wasn't as prolific as a performance of a season than I thought it was the season before. But they still got there.
I guess if you're going to take the flip side of the argument, is this a missed opportunity for Arsenal? And I say that, listen, they were tremendous. They won more games in a Premier League season than ever before. They scored more goals. But it's the points they dropped. Fulham, West Ham. If you're not going to get ahead of them now, are you ever going to get ahead of them?
Not the fairy tale ending that Klopp wanted.
And I think he'd be a miss for the Premier League, you know, whether you love him or hate him. I think he was great in front of camera, he was entertaining. I think his side, I've got to be completely honest with you, if you offered me a season ticket, barring whatever side it was, I want to watch Liverpool every single week. They were absolutely breathtaking.
The worst bottom three in history.
If you can't stay up this season, then you may as well pack up and go straight back to the Championship.
This is the worst performance in Premier League history of three teams who have come up from the Championship. It's only ever happened once before that all three that have come up have gone down, and they weren't as bad as this.
If you think about the next step of Kieran McKenna's ladder, it could be Brighton, and I think he's a perfect fit for them.
Decent squad to be inherited. I think they feel they'll be challenging for Europe next season with the greatest will in the world. If Ipswich finish 17th, it's another miracle, isn't it?
Stick or twist with Ten Hag?
For now, stick.
I wake up one morning, I think he needs to go. I wake up the next, I think he needs a chance. What I haven't got is a name of someone who comes in and replaces him.
Yes, they have done it again for the fourth successive season. For the first time in English top flight history, Manchester City have won 4 in a row. Yesterday's victory over West Ham sealed it, and it was never really in much doubt. Micky Gray is here, so is Alex Crook, as we look back on the Premier League season, a Premier League season which has once again seen Manchester City crowned as champions and Arsenal finish in second place. But before we delve into all the action, Micky, we better settle a bet, because looking at the Premier League table, I see that Chelsea have finished above Manchester United, and Crook and I had a bet in around about October, November time, and I said that whoever finishes higher out of Chelsea and Manchester United, the loser out of the two of us has to wear the other shirt on the final podcast of the season. Now, he said absolutely no chance was his response at the time.
I don't even remember this bet.
Of course you don't.
Fabric of his imagination.
Producer Joe, thank you very much. Could you squeeze into that, please? As we've always said,
I can't wait to see this.
It is a medium shirt.
I'll hold that for you.
So we are very much looking forward to this particular moment.
It's the worst kit in the world, by the way. What is that?
Mate, just put it on. Stop moaning. You have to pay your bets sometimes, fella. No, put it on. Come on. Squeeze into it. Look at that. I don't want it back after you've stretched it, by the way. Jeez. Look at that. Look, that's perfect.
It's perfect.
It's perfect.
Fit, that.
It's like a lycra top. We love it. Excellent.
That looks beautiful.
Okay, I lost a couple of pounds.
You must have been so confident when you placed that bet in October time, because Chelsea were that far away. My goodness.
Another stick to beat Eric Ten Hag with, I think.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's not worry about that just now. Because,
I've got to wear this for the whole pod.
Yeah, for the whole podcast.
You won't be able to get it off.
We might need a steamer.
I did have a message last night asking if we were willing to give it to charity after I've finished with it. So
absolutely.
Maybe you could sign it, Micky could sign it.
Absolutely, we do that. We're auctioning it off, although I'm not necessarily sure after you've stretched it and sweated in it that anyone would particularly want it. You never know. Right, okay, let's talk about Manchester City and Arsenal. It was a duel to the end, but in the end there was only one winner, and I think it was probably inevitable. Manchester City are the Premier League champions again for the 6th time in 7 seasons. Micky, you're our Manchester correspondent. I know it's very difficult to take everything seriously when Crook's standing dressed like that, but he is wearing a very tight-fitting Chelsea shirt. If you're listening to this podcast, he's actually paid his debt for once, and he's wearing a very tight-fitting Chelsea top. It's getting very uncomfortable. But Manchester City never look uncomfortable, do they? They always look like they're going to seal the deal. Is it a mark of just how good they are that none of us really thought there was much chance yesterday that the tide was going to turn?
No, I don't think it was in doubt, was it? Yeah, there was about 7 or 8 games left for Arsenal and for Man City, and I think a lot of people got asked the question of where either side were going to drop any points. Barring the Aston Villa game for Arsenal, I think it always looked like Arsenal were going to go all the way, and and pick up 3 points in every single game, which they did. And I think you could say similar about Man City, because they've done it before over the last 2 or 3 seasons when they picked up the title as well. They've went all the way. They've went on these incredible runs. And they've just raised the bar, haven't they, over the last 4 seasons, or since Pep walked through the door. And I think you look, what was it, 3 games they lost this season? That's the bar. And that's where Arsenal have got to try and reach. And you look at slip-ups throughout the season, you go, oh, what was it this game? Was it that game? No, it's not. It's just that's how good Man City are. And everybody else is playing catch-up yet again.
91 points they picked up this season. They're normalising the fact that you need 90 points now in order to win the league. And Arsenal 89 and still falling short. That's so frustrating for them. But is it them setting the bar so high? Have they knocked it on again? Or are the fact that the others are so good now, they're pushing them and pushing them and pushing them to be better?
Well, I think I don't know if they were better this season than they were last. I'd probably argue they weren't. So I guess if you're going to take the flip side of the argument, is this a missed opportunity for Arsenal? And I say that, listen, they were tremendous. They won more games in a Premier League season than ever before. They scored more goals. But it's the points they dropped. Fulham, West Ham, Aston Villa have had a brilliant season. You can sort of
but you're going to drop points. Manchester City dropped points against Crystal Palace.
Yeah, but they didn't really drop points against their title rivals. So I think that's going to be a real source of frustration.
But Arsenal got more points against the top 6 than anybody else.
Exactly, and still didn't win the league. So I do think it's a missed opportunity for Arsenal. As brilliant as Manchester City were, and they were ruthless, particularly in the first 20 minutes against West Ham here. They've been there, they've got the T-shirt. But I kind of feel like if you can't finish above them this season, with Kevin De Bruyne missing a lot of the season, Haaland was injured for 2 months, some of the signings they made, Nunez in particular, didn't really make an impact. If you're not going to get ahead of them now, are you ever going to get ahead of them?
Well, that's an issue, isn't it? And, you know, as I mentioned beforehand, I can't work out whether or not is that they are so competitive that every time they feel the hot breath of a competitor behind them, they go on an extra notch, or whether it's the fact that they are just so good, it's impossible to catch them.
Well, as Crookie will find out when the transfer window opens, you watch the sides around, how much they go out and they spend, and what they try and do to catch up Man City. But we know City will do exactly the same. There might be 2 or 3 players that leave this club, but there'll be another 2 or 3 players who are just ready-made to go into that Man City squad. But being in his press conferences a lot this season, and even I was there on Friday, Pep's press conference before the game at the weekend, he doesn't just talk about the players. He talks about everything, the infrastructure, the people behind the scenes that you don't see, the jobs that they do. Everybody seems to be on the same page, and they've just got that winning mentality, and it's a winning machine. And you see these players, they know what they've got to do. I mean, Crookie mentioned that before about the players that have been missing. Kevin De Bruyne and Erling Haaland. They didn't miss them really, did they? I mean, you just look. I mean, and you're right, it wasn't as prolific as a performance of a season than I thought it was the season before, but they still got there.
Yeah, and I mean, he's obviously still scored goals and won the Golden Boot, Erling Haaland, despite the fact that he missed 2 months of the season. And Kevin De Bruyne has almost won the Playmaker Award, even though he missed 5 months of the season, which just shows how hungry and ruthless that those two are. And actually, you mentioned the organisation behind Pep Guardiola, and he paid tribute to that yesterday in his press conference after the game. He was talking about Jurgen Klopp and actually paying tribute to him, and did say that he made him a better manager because of the way that his Liverpool side played during those years when they were really pushing City for the title. But one of the things that Pep pointed out, I think is important, is the fact that he said that he gets so much from the club that other managers don't get.
Yeah, I mean, the structure behind the scenes is fantastic. The chairman was on the pitch yesterday.
Others have got to learn from that.
Yeah, I think they have. Certainly, just down the road from here, Manchester United look like the penny's finally dropping. You can't get it right on the pitch until you've got the proper structure off the pitch. You look at Arsenal, don't underestimate the role that Edu has played in their success and his partnership with Mikel Arteta. So it's joined up thinking here, no question about that. And obviously there have been some stellar individual performances as well. You look at, for me, their 2 most important players this season. Phil Foden, without a doubt, has taken his game to new levels. I think the challenge is there for Gareth Southgate to get that kind of performance out of Foden in an England shirt, because we haven't really seen it yet. And Rodri, 70-odd games, unbeaten, comes up with yet another big goal just when there was a little bit of tension in the air yesterday. I think for me, they've been City's standout players this season. Was
it 9 goals for Rodri, his most prolific season? 27 for Foden this campaign. And you and I were at the Landmark Hotel on Thursday with Gareth Southgate. And Phil Foden did an interview after receiving his Football Writers Player of the Year award, in which he talked about playing centrally and how that was his favoured position and probably the reason why he's thrived so much this season. Is it possible to get him into an England team centrally?
They have to get him in somewhere. I mean, I know it's difficult. I mean, you look at Bellingham, who's obviously, I think everybody thinks is going to probably play in that position. He might play in a little bit of a deeper position, but Phil Foden's been outstanding this season. You talk about taking the reins when Kevin De Bruyne was missing and playing in that role. He was just absolutely outstanding. And again, you know, you talk about a player who can still get better. He's still young. I think he's not 24 until next week. I think that's when his birthday is. He's just an absolute superstar, he really is. And the other thing is, you don't hear anything. This is the good thing about it, and this is what used to be like Man United. Away from football, you never heard anything about the players. You don't hear anything about any of the individuals. Yeah, Kyle Walker at times, I think, he got a bit of stuff in the newspapers. I think there's stuff about Jack Grealish, but apart from that, you don't hear anything about the players. You just get on with the business. And the players under Pep, you can't say one player has not improved since he came to this club.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, he improves everyone. And even, you speak to Angus Gunn at Southampton, you speak to Cole Palmer, and they'll tell you stories about little things that he's spoken to them about, which have changed their games immeasurably. Just little words here and there that have helped them develop. And he's certainly developed every player that's come through into the City ranks. And there's quite a few youngsters that have emerged onto the scene. Of course, Phil Foden is the most famous of those. What about Pep Guardiola? 1 year left on his contract. I thought he gave some seriously mixed messages yesterday in a number of different interviews. And I know that they called us up and said that he wanted to talk to us after the game about something. We still haven't got to the bottom of it. We've actually invited him to come across from the Etihad.
We invited him for a Chinese as well last night. He didn't
want to come. He wanted to speak to us about something. I wonder whether or not he was going to give us an exclusive because, depending on who he was speaking to yesterday, he was talking about it being closer to him leaving than not. He said in the press conference, what else is there for me to do? What next? I've done everything I can do here. I've still got 1 year on my contract, and at the moment I'm thinking about staying. But it was all at the moment. It was all maybe, ifs and buts. It does make you wonder a little bit, and we mentioned this before.
Absolutely, and I think Man City are keen to get him tied down to a long-term contract because he's only got a year left.
Is that what it's all about? Is he playing for a better contract, a new extension? What is this? What is he negotiating tactic?
He's probably beyond that. I think genuinely he's wrestling with the idea of whether or not at the end of that contract, and I do expect him to honour the final year, will he have taken Man City as far as he can? Maybe if he makes it 2 Champions League wins, that might just sway his mind. But it's going to have a knock-on effect for Arsenal as well, because I think I'm right in saying that Mikel Arteta has only got a year left on his contract. Yeah. And if you're talking about successors, well, there's a ready-made one, isn't there, in North London?
Well, it's interesting because I spoke to him about that yesterday, and he said, I want to stay. I mean, he was pretty ardent about that. I mean, he's galvanised that group. I think he's been brilliant, actually.
You love him?
I do. I've got a little bit of a man crush on him. We were having a chat yesterday, and I find him quite personable. I know some people think he's a little bit spiky occasionally, but I get on with him quite well. And I think he's got the ability to bring you into his circle. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's why the Arsenal, the group feels so positive.
You'd like your daughter to bring him on, wouldn't you? He's one of them, isn't he? I think he's got that nice nature about him.
Especially if he gets a new contract, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't see him, Crookie, here at City.
He does like Didsbury. He used to live in Didsbury near me, and he used to go in the Expo Lounge down the road.
I think he likes London as well. I don't know. I mean, you're right about the 7-year thing, what Pep mentioned yesterday. I think he will extend his contract. I just wonder where he would go after this. For his legacy, does he go to Italy? Would he enjoy? Would he enjoy that?
It's the only big club in Europe he's not managed, isn't it?
Yeah.
If he can win the Champions League for them, he's basically completed football.
Yeah, but I do think he wants to win another Champions League here. I really do, because he kept on saying after they won the first one, there's a lot of clubs have won 1. We need to win 2. We need to win 3. And I think until he does that, I think he'll still be here.
The thing is he's not the youngest manager, but he's not the oldest manager by any stretch of the imagination. And if you are him and you're looking around and you're looking at the Premier League, they won 6 of the last 7. Since he got his feet under the table after that first season, they've pretty much dominated the Premier League. I mean, he doesn't really have to move on, does he? I mean, he's got great setup here. He's not going to get it any better anywhere else. If he's enjoying himself, I might just stay and win another 5. That's possible, isn't it?
5 in a row. I mean, they're talking about 4, which is obviously an achievement in itself. I mean, it's just absolutely incredible. But they're going to be favourites next season.
Absolutely.
Probably the favourites this season.
They're odds on already.
There you go. I mean, who's going to stop them? And I've got to be completely honest with you now. I think next season is probably a 2-horse race.
Between Arsenal and them?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't see Liverpool chasing them down.
Chelsea, maybe? Crook's
Chelsea will improve, his new club.
Only if they get a better kit.
Well, they won't be signing Crookie after seeing him in that one, will they?
Mate, honestly, after this section, you can take it off because it is...
It's offensive.
I mean, it may well end up taking down our YouTube numbers.
I'm gonna hold you to that.
Mikel Arteta and Arsenal, though, have said that they are going to go again. And actually, he went on the pitch yesterday and he said afterwards, look, do not be satisfied by second place. He was not only warning, I think, the Arsenal supporters, he wants them to drive them on, but I think it was a message to his players as well. And he said, actually, I made some changes that people didn't like in the summer last year. And he was talking about Ramsdale. He was talking about bringing Havertz in, but he said, I'll make more changes like that in order to get this club closer.
Yeah, and I think job number one is a number 9, because I think ultimately when you look at those games where they didn't win, Aston Villa obviously conceded 2 late goals, they had chances, and if they had an Erling Haaland, and I appreciate they're not easy to find, then I think it may well have been a different outcome. They've looked at Ivan Toney, they've looked at Benjamin Šeško, who I'm a massive fan of at RB Leipzig, and I think we will see a number 9 come in. We'll almost certainly see Eddie Nketiah depart, and they might sacrifice Gabriel Jesus as well to do that.
Okay, let's see what happens with them. Let's focus a little bit now on some of the European places. Aston Villa have secured Champions League football and Spurs have finished 5th. But does that represent a good season? Aston Villa have finished 4th and they've secured Champions League football in its current format anyway for the first time. It's the first time they've played in the top level of European competition since the early 80s when they were holders of the European Cup back in the day. He's done a fantastic job. Unai Emery should be credited, shouldn't he?
Yeah, without a doubt.
Didn't have the greatest end, obviously,
no,
yesterday. They seem to have been on the beach, but it was a brilliant season.
It was just getting the job done, wasn't it? Getting that 4th spot tied up. Once they'd done that, I think the end of the season was just the players in relief of all the hard work that they've put in. But the side he's put together, the organisation, the style, I have to say as well, has been absolutely fantastic.
It's risky, isn't it? But it works.
Yes, it is, yeah. And I think they found that out later on in the season. Obviously at the end of the European reign as well this season, and obviously at the end of the season. But I think that's something that he'll address in the summer. It's a well-run club, brilliant support, I've got to say. And when you go to Villa Park, you know you're watching a game of football. So if he gets 2 or 3 players in who will strengthen that squad, I don't think they need to get rid of too many, but they need 2 or 3. I think they can have a real push next season. Yeah,
I've been impressed with the way, especially in the first half of the season, that they kept that high line so brilliantly regimented. They play the offside trap better than any other team, I think, since the famous Arsenal backline of the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s. But can they keep this squad together? That's the big question, because there will be those who are starting to think about trying to take someone like Ollie Watkins. There might be a few takers for other members of that team.
Yeah, I'm going to disagree with Mickey about next season and make a bold prediction.
There's a shot
for the next campaign. I don't think Villa finish in the top 6 next season. I think it's going to be very difficult for them to improve on what they've achieved this season. I think it's almost comparable to Newcastle, maybe come a year too early in terms of Champions League football. And they do have definite PSR issues. I know they are the driving force behind trying to raise the number that you can lose next season from £105 million over a 3-year period to £135 million.
Well, that would make sense, bearing in mind inflation's been at 12% in the not too distant past, and it's still running quite high. So, I mean, why on earth we're still going from a figure that was set in 2021? It seems a bit odd.
I think that will happen, but it might not necessarily negate the fact they may have to cash in on some players. I ran a story for the Transfer Notebook on the website a few weeks ago, suggesting Emi Martinez is very much on Chelsea's radar. I think in Ollie Watkins you have a player that fits the profile that Manchester United and Ineos are looking to bring to Old Trafford. There's talk they may have to cash in on young Ramsey as well, because of course he's a homegrown player. As we know, with Chelsea and Conor Gallagher, if you sell a homegrown player, it's 100% profit. So I think it could be a difficult window for Aston Villa to try and navigate. Despite the fact their owners are ambitious, the rules just don't allow them to be, and that's what happened with Newcastle.
I agree with that. I have to say I agree. I think it'll be a struggle for them to finish in the top 6, but only because I think the other sides who were there or thereabouts will get better. And obviously having Champions League football as well is going to be a lot of weight on the shoulders, and I think it will be difficult for them, but that's not to say it's still not going to be a good season for them.
Surely Chelsea and Manchester United won't be as bad this season, although Chelsea finished in the top 6 if I remember rightly.
We haven't talked about that.
We haven't. We can do that.
Chelsea will be fine as long as they use their brains and keep Pochettino.
Yes, they must do that. But the PSR thing does irritate me because it seems like the rules have been written so badly.
Yeah.
How can we have worked ourselves into a situation? I mean, what are you doing where you've written rules which encourages you to sell your homegrown players because it's worth more to you on the balance sheet than buying a foreign star? I mean, with all due respect to the great talent that's available around Europe, isn't the whole idea of the academy structure and the EPP plan that we implemented 10, 15 years ago to generate more English talent in the Premier League? Now we're getting to the point where we're encouraged to sell them because it works 100% on the balance sheet. I mean, it's absolutely ludicrous, isn't it?
It's madness, and we spoke about it a lot, in particular with Chelsea. You've got the Conor Gallagher situation where he's the captain. He plays every week. Pochettino clearly wants to keep him. Every chance he'll be sold this summer because there's still no movement in terms of a contract. Trevor Chalobah came into the side. I think he started 18 of the last 19 games, had a real impact in terms of their upturn. And they're willing to cash in on him, I understand, as well, for the same reason.
They sold him last summer.
It's absolutely mindless.
They sold him last summer if it wasn't for the fact that he was injured during the summer transfer window, which is ridiculous. I mean, you and I did an article with you for the website a year ago about Chelsea cashing in on all their homegrown talent, and pretty much all of them did go, apart from the two, Gallagher and Chalobah, and they tried to sell Gallagher.
Tried to sell Maatsen as well. He's now going to play in the Champions League final.
Yeah. He's not an English player, but he's a homegrown player because he came through the academy. He's on loan at Borussia Dortmund. He's going to play in the Champions League final. And Chelsea haven't got a left back at this moment in time. Well, that's not true. They got Marc Cucurella. Not the fairy tale ending that Klopp wanted on Sunday. He wanted to go away, I suppose, with the quadruple. We ended up going with one trophy, but they gave him a good send-off, didn't they?
Yeah, it was brilliant. I suppose you have to, when you look at the whole picture of Jurgen Klopp's time at Liverpool, well deserved. You look at his trophy cabinet, what he's brought to Liverpool under difficult times, and we've already talked about Manchester City and how dominant they've been. So to win those amount of trophies that he's done since he's been at the club have been absolutely phenomenal. And I think he'd be a miss for the Premier League. You know, whether you love him or hate him, I think he was great in front of camera. He was entertaining. I think his side, I've got to be completely honest with you, if you offered me a season ticket, barring whatever side it was, I want to watch Liverpool every single week. They were absolutely breathtaking. When you look at Salah, Mane, Firmino, that front three for me was absolutely spectacular. And what a side they had. You would love to watch them every single week. He's had to change it all around. The midfield's obviously changed this season as well after, you know, the players got a little bit too old and they had to move them on. And it's now Arne Slot, who's obviously come into the club as well, so he's going to have different ideas. And I just think this is why I've said it's a two-horse race with Arsenal and Man City next season. I don't think Liverpool are going to be pushing anywhere near those top two spots. He's got a job to do. He's got to get everybody on side. He's got to try and do it quickly. But they're still in a good place. Their squad is a lot better than, you know, if you go back to Manchester United, Fergie days, etc. He's left that squad in a lot stronger place.
Well, this is an interesting question. I mean, because obviously he did the whole get on the mic at the end of the game thing, which now seems to be the trend. I'm all for it, by the way, because I think it's good to see managers out explain themselves to fans, but also sort of, you know, showing themselves and their emotions. It looks good. But he did start singing the Arne Slot song and say that he's got to be given the sort of support. He said, actually welcome him the way you did me, and from the first day you've got to go for it 100% with him. It had echoes of Sir Alex Ferguson and David Moyes, didn't it, at the end of the season that Manchester United last won the title. But how big a job has Arne Slot got to do?
Well, I guess in terms of what Jurgen Klopp means to the Liverpool fans, the city of Liverpool and the football club, this is comparable to replacing Sir Alex. Obviously the longevity isn't the same. He didn't win as many trophies as Sir Alex did, but I think the imprint that he made on the football club, you can compare it. And I think he's going to be a really hard act to follow. Arne Slot is a different type of personality. Obviously you've got the concern that maybe Dutch managers don't always translate what they do in the Eredivisie to the Premier League.
Where's your evidence for that?
but not just him. I mean, there's not just Ten Hag. There's a long list of Dutch players and managers who haven't been able to quite cut it in the Premier League. So I do think this is a big gamble for Liverpool, and I understand why Jurgen Klopp is making that rallying cry, because I think it might get worse with Liverpool before it gets better.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what the budget is, but they've certainly got a new team behind the scenes, haven't they? Richard Hughes, Julian Ward is back, so is Michael Edwards. So they've got some expertise behind the scenes, and I think they would have already started work on acquisitions to bolster that squad.
Well, I'm pleased you mentioned that, Sam, because he's got a lot of big decisions to make. Arne Slot, I'm talking about. Salah's got a year left on his contract. Don't know what's going to happen with him.
He's not going to make them, though, is he? I mean, he's going to be that transfer board, that technical team.
Yeah, but I'm sure
above
they're going to have a conversation with the manager to say, right, do you want to actually
But they'll
keep
drive
the players?
it, won't
Yeah,
they?
but the players are so powerful now. They just make their own decisions up. But that's a huge decision.
I mean, you've got to sell him if he's not going to sign a new contract.
Yeah, exactly.
He's only got a year left.
But
He's only going to be worth money for another 3 months.
The club will be thinking, right, can we cash in and get 70 million now, or do we let him run his contract out? I think he'll stay for another year. And then he can go to Saudi Arabia, which I think he wants to do at the end of his career, which look, he's done everything for
Liverpool
I
can't
think
allow
that's
that
what's
to
going to
happen,
happen.
can they?
I think that it will happen. And it's not great for Liverpool, but that's the way I see it. Trent Alexander-Arnold's got a year left on his contract. Virgil van Dijk, a year left on his contract. You give him a new contract, he's going to be 33 years old then. Massive decisions that need to be made at Liverpool.
And I was a bit surprised actually to see Virgil van Dijk's name on the shortlist for Premier League Player of the Year, because I don't think it's been a vintage Van Dijk season.
I think he's played much better this year than he did the last year.
I still don't think he's played his way into a new contract at his age. I think Trent Alexander-Arnold is a no-brainer, but it wouldn't surprise me if Van Dijk was to move on.
Well, it'll be interesting to see how Arne Slot and Richard Hughes and Michael Edwards and Julian Ward view that. But I mean, I think Virgil van Dijk, perfect for a new contract and probably should stay. He's the captain. He's led that team this year. He scored the winning goal in the cup final for them. I think it is an absolute no-brainer to give him a new contract. And the same with Mo Salah. If you can tie him down to one, you've got to keep him. Otherwise, you have to sell him this summer. Trent Alexander-Arnold, he'll stay. There's no doubt about that. I mean, he's a Liverpool dyed-in-the-wool fan, as well as a Liverpool, a legend in the making. I think he'll be the next captain, I think, over the course of the next few years. He's matured, especially in the last 12 months, and he'll go away with England. Enough about Liverpool and Jurgen Klopp. Let's concentrate on some of those teams that really disappointed us. The worst bottom three in history. Well, a significant reason for the three relegated clubs failing to win more points than ever before can be explained in a record-breaking statistic. The most goals conceded combined by three relegated sides in a single Premier League season stood at 237 goals in 2011-2012. Luton, Burnley and Sheffield United surpassed that with several games to spare. They conceded 267 times. I mean, most of those were Sheffield United, to be fair. But, I mean, listen, are they the worst three in Premier League history? I mean, it's embarrassing, really, that the low 26. You only need 27 points to stay up this season. That's dreadful, isn't it?
I can't think of another three. I don't know if you can, Crookie, but even watching the side as well, I mean, we kept giving Luton a fighting chance every single week, but they just seem to let you down. You know, good performances, but not picking up any points. Burnley tried to play the same style that they did by getting promoted from the Championship. It was never going to work for them. They just didn't have the quality there. And Sheffield United, where do you start? You know, lost their two best players.
104 goals, is it, that they conceded?
It's just ridiculous. I
mean, that's ridiculous. Swindon's record was 100, 93, 94, but they had 4 more games.
So where do you start? I mean, I see the three sides that are getting promoted, or we've got 2 at the moment.
Yeah.
In Ipswich
and
Leicester City. If they come up and try and play the same style of football that the other Premier League sides do, then the same thing is going to happen again.
26 points. You needed 27 to stay in the Premier League. That's embarrassing.
Yeah, and
for all the plaudits you can give Luton and Rob Edwards, you know, it's great. You know, well done. They were in a lot of games, but 26 points is it's off the scale.
I think what you can say for Luton is, in some ways, they won their mini league, because I think they were always going to finish in the bottom 3.
Yeah,
and they've ended up finishing 3rd from bottom, despite the fact that Burnley spent so much money. Sheffield United had a little bit more Premier League experience in their squad.
So far adrift of Nottingham Forest, who had points deducted.
I agree, and I think, again, if you can't stay up this season, then you may as well pack up and go straight back to the Championship, because the opportunity was there. I think it was a missed opportunity. I agree with Adrian Durham in terms of the January transfer window, because going forward they were fine, Luton. They scored in 90% of their games.
They had injuries.
Yeah, but they didn't ever replace Tom Lockyer. Obviously, you can't plan for that kind of event, but they did have the January window to try and find a little bit of grit at the heart of their defence, and ultimately I think that's cost them. If they were better defensively, they had the attacking weapons, I think they would have been able to get beyond Forest and Everton.
Yeah, I'm not going to denigrate Luton's achievements too much, because I think out of the bottom three, they certainly were the team that tried the hardest,
most competitive,
and certainly the most competitive. And in some of the big games against the big teams, actually,
yes.
And they were unlucky in one or two of those not to take more points. They got a draw at home to Liverpool, but the other two, I mean,
waste of space.
I mean, it's actually frightening that they thought it was okay to come up and give that sort of performance. I think it's a damning indictment, actually, of the naivety of both clubs. I know that there's financial issues behind the scenes at both, and I know that they want to play a certain way and want to do this, but this is not just an example of two teams coming up and not quite getting there. This is the worst performance in Premier League history of three teams who have come up from the Championship. It's only ever happened once before that all three that have come up have gone down, and they weren't as bad as this, Mickey.
Do you know what baffles me before Mickey comes in? There seems to be a concern at Burnley that the Vincent Kompany could be on Brighton's radar. That's been pretty much dismissed by my sources down on the south coast, but it shouldn't be a concern about whether they're going to keep Vincent Kompany. The question is why he wasn't under more scrutiny over the course of the season. He spent buckets of money, never changed his style, he never gave them a chance
or
to
never
stay
changed
up.
his personnel. When it was quite clear that the goalkeeper was struggling, it took him a long time to change it, by which time Aaron Muric came in, and then he didn't have the confidence of the back line because he came in so late in the season.
I mean, he made mistakes himself, let's not forget, when he came back into the starting 11 as well. Look, I like the style of football that Burnley played last season, but you could just tell straight away that Vincent Kompany, without a doubt.
But it's all right having philosophy and principles, and we say this about Ange Postecoglou, Mickey. The fact is, you still got to win matches.
Yeah, you've got to change it up. You've got to have that plan B, as we always say, don't you? And if that plan A is not working, go to your plan B, start picking up some points. If you've been promoted, and I keep saying this to the sides, if you get off to a slow start, you're playing catch-up all of the time, and that's the difficult thing about coming into the Premier League. Everybody thinks, we've romped the Championship, we're just going to jump into the Premier League, we'll keep playing the same style of football, we might change a few things around, yes, we'll spend 100 million quid to try and make ourselves better, but if you don't get off to a good start in the Premier League, you're always playing catch-up.
The three teams that are coming up may well believe that they can do a little bit better, mainly because the parachute payments that any of them were going to get, they don't get, and all the clubs in the Premier League are going to split those between them, which of course is really fair, isn't it? Because Leicester obviously recently down, Leeds and Southampton both recently have gone down as well, and they're competing for the final place. Ipswich, slightly different, they wouldn't have got parachute payments, but they will have a little bit of investment because they've raised a bit of capital in the last few months. But will they still have the same manager, because he's been linked with Brighton?
Yeah, I think that's very much open to debate. I think he is a leading candidate, if not the leading candidate, to replace Roberto De Zerbi after that bombshell announcement on Saturday. And the sense I get is that he would be willing to consider leaving Ipswich, back-to-back promotions into the Premier League. It would seem harsh on their supporters, but it's an opportunity, isn't it, to climb a few rungs of the ladder. Brighton, really well-run club, brilliant record profits last season, money to spend, a decent squad to be inherited. I think they feel they'll be challenging for Europe next season with the greatest will in the world. If Ipswich finish 17th, it's another miracle, isn't it?
You manage players are selfish, right? Okay, let's get that straight. They have to be. Managers have got to be as well. And if you think about the next step of Kieran McKenna's ladder, it could be Brighton, and I think he's a perfect fit for them. I really do. I mean, if you give him funds to bring in again, 2 or 3 players, maybe even more than that, I think he could do an incredible job there. I've been really impressed with him so far.
Where does De Zerbi end up?
Not sure anywhere immediately. Obviously, we're all cynical, and when we heard that announcement, he's walked away without a payoff. You think, well, he must have another job lined up. But speaking of people close to De Zerbi, they were insisting he's not held talks with any other football club. I think the sporting director at Bayern Munich was asked, is your next manager going to be an Italian? Because, of course, Allegri's available as well. And he said no. Other jobs that he's been linked with, Liverpool, we know it's going to be Arne Slot. Not sure he's particularly keen to go back to Italy, having been linked with AC Milan. Barcelona looks like Xavi probably will stay. So there's not really a post for him. I was always told he wasn't particularly keen to go back to Serie A, but obviously Juventus are a massive football club. I think he'll take a break initially, and who knows, if Erik ten Hag limps into the new season and doesn't start well, he might be a contender for that job.
There is a lot of jobs that are going to be doing the rounds over the course of the next little while, and there's not a great deal of managers available to take the vacancies. Let's talk about one that isn't vacant. Manchester United will not play in European football this next season, unless they win the FA Cup. Are they going to win the FA Cup?
And I'm sure the players are jumping through hoops, aren't they, to play in the Europa Conference League, aren't they, at Manchester United?
Well, they should be.
It's just not where they should be, Sam. We know that. We've talked about it so many times. Look, if you go back
But they
to
can play in the Europa League, Mickey, if they win the FA Cup. The question was, can they win the FA Cup?
Well, they can win it. Yeah, they can win it. But if you're asking me right now who's going to win it, then I say Man City. Because from what I've seen from Manchester United this season, it's just been nowhere near good enough. The style of football, what is the style of football? And I know he's had his injury problems, and look, he keeps talking about it. When I go on his press conferences, look, we've used 13 different centre-half partnerships this season. The back four's changed so many times. I mean, I see Wan-Bissaka playing right back and then left back the week after. I don't get that. Diego Dalot playing exactly the same thing, right and left back. So that must be quite hard as a coach to try and work on a back four that should be solid week in, week out. I get that part of it, but it's the rest of the side. You know, what's been happening in the midfield. They knew they had a problem in the first 3 or 4 games with Casemiro playing in that midfield area. They got lucky with Mainu when he came into the team. He saved them a fortune. I suppose you could look at it that way. The forward line, nowhere near good enough. And if I'm Rasmus Højlund, I don't know if he will ever get, with those wide players that Manchester United have got, I don't think he'll ever get to 15 goals in a Manchester United.
Got to 10 in the end.
Yeah, and he's done incredible. But you look at most of the goals that he scores.
16 across all competitions.
He creates them himself. You can probably count on one hand how many goals he's got from crosses. He's not going to get the service, and I really do think he's a very good player, but he needs better wide players.
Big FA Cup preview coming later in the week, by the way, on the podcast. Look out for that. So, stick or twist with Ten Hag?
For now, stick.
You know my views on this. I don't have a view. I wake up one morning, I think he needs to go. I wake up the next, I think he needs a chance.
The ultimate flip-flopper.
What I haven't got is a name of someone who comes in and replaces him.
Yeah.
And if it's very easy as a football fan or a football pundit to say this manager's got to go. Okay, but who comes in to replace him? I don't think there is a standout contender. I think the structure hasn't been right above him. Clearly they're trying to sort that out. Mickey's mentioned the injury issues. There is a chance they could win the FA Cup because maybe City have used up such emotional energy trying to get this 4th successive title in a row. They might be a little bit undercooked at Wembley. United have won their last 2 games in the Premier League. He seems to have stumbled across a formation actually that is getting results. So I'm not as pessimistic about that cup final as maybe I was 3 weeks ago.
Okay, I'm pleased that you've matured over the years and started to come into my line of thinking.
I don't think I've matured.
You know, the idea that you can't always just turn around and say, let's sack the manager unless you've got a replacement in mind. It's good. I think we've mentioned that to you.
I stand by sacking the rest of the managers we got rid of, by the way. All of them.
Yeah.
Right, okay, let's try and end on a positive with some of our highlights of the season. Let's end this episode on a positive note. We've dissected the top of the table and the bottom of the table. Let's move into some of our honourable mentions. Who was your standout manager of the season?
Well, I'll go a bit left field here. I'm going to Sean Dyche.
All right, okay.
I think he's done an incredible job when you think about the problems they'd have off the field and the deductions that they had going through that season to keep the players focused and finish where they finished. I think that was stellar.
Crook?
Eric, no. It's got to be Unai Emery. To get Aston Villa into the top 4, he sees an opportunity because you mentioned Chelsea United was so poor, but he still had to go up against Tottenham and this godlike figure that is Ange Postecoglou. So, yeah, congratulations, Unai Emery. I don't think you can argue with that.
I think there's some big mentions that need to be made. Pep getting his team back on course after the treble to win a 4th successive title and possibly become the first team in history to win back-to-back doubles. Mikel Arteta for getting even closer to Manchester City. Andoni Iraola, who came in during the summer. Everybody thought he was going to get sacked in October and November, and he ended up turning it around, and Bournemouth have got more points than they've ever managed before. Oliver Glasner swooping in at the Eagles, taking over from relegation-threatened Crystal Palace and turning their season around within a matter of weeks, deserves a lot of credit. Gary O'Neill stepping in the last few days of pre-season to guide Wolverhampton Wanderers to safety when their previous manager decided that they were going to be relegated, so he walked out. And, of course, Maurizio Pochettino, who you lot were all trying to sack earlier in the season.
Hey, don't accuse me of
right
that.
off. Yeah, you certainly were. You started to question him earlier in the season. You're now getting back on the bandwagon because you know that he's done a terrific job. To finish 6th in that maelstrom of chaos, absolutely terrific. What team do you think was unlucky this season, deserve more?
Go on, Crookie, you go first. I need to think about this one.
Do you know what I'm going to say? Newcastle. In that Champions League group of death. Obviously, brilliant night at home to Paris Saint-Germain. Really bad officiating. Cost them a place in the knockout stages.
You?
This is a tough one, Sam, for me. I think I'd maybe go along with Crookie there. I think Newcastle had their injury problems and it really hurt them. If they'd have flipped their 2 seasons around, I think Eddie Howe, you would say, has done an incredible job, but I think he found a period where it was really difficult for them. So, yeah, I think, it pains me to say it, but probably Newcastle. I have to agree with that, yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm probably going to say Arsenal, because to get 89 points and not win the title is a major disappointment. They played well, club record goals, club record number of Premier League victories. I think I'll say Arsenal. Biggest disappointment, I'll start Manchester United.
Well, you tipped them for the title, if I remember.
Well, that's what I'm saying, the biggest disappointment. I didn't say that they win the title. What I said is that they would run close, and they should have done, because he got everything he wanted in the summer.
Yeah, I'd agree. Obviously, I've spent the season bemoaning Manchester United, lowest ever Premier League finish.
-1 goal difference.
Managed to finish bottom of a Champions League group. They should have cruised through, really. Obviously got to the FA Cup final. Needed a lot of luck to do that against Coventry in that semi-final. So they've got massive room for improvement, no question about that.
Do you know, I probably agree with both of you, but I'm going to say Tottenham, because I thought they got off to an incredible start to the season. What was it, 26 points after 10 games or something?
First side ever to get that many points in the first 10 games and not finish in the top 3.
Yeah.
That's what we do, mate.
And not to finish in the Champions League spots after that start, I've got to say that's a massive disappointment for me.
Your standout moment, whether that is on the field or off the field?
Wow.
Well, I'll tell you what, I think when you look at goals, and I think he has got goal of the season as well, I've got to say Garnacho.
Yeah.
Where that come from was just out of the blue, and nobody expected that. I don't even think he had that in the locker, to be honest with you. I'm not a massive fan, I've got to be completely honest with you, but that was just a wow moment for me.
I guess in terms of boom factor and shock factor, you probably go Jurgen Klopp announcing halfway through the season he was stepping down. As a fan, it would have been Amad Diallo and that winner in extra time against Liverpool in the FA Cup, because despite all the misery that United have put us through this season, that was one moment of unbridled joy, and actually it absolutely derailed Liverpool's season as well. Yeah,
I'm going to go Cole Palmer signing for Chelsea, which was amazing for my off-the-field moment, because the way he has performed, the most goals and assists in the Premier League combined this season. I mean, it's terrific. For a team that finished 6th, the number of goals he scored, the fact that he got over 20 goals in the Premier League alone is unreal, really. You know, back-to-back home hat-tricks, including the winner against Manchester United, scoring that penalty in the last throws of the game against Manchester City. He's been an absolute star. But in terms of being at games, Amad Diallo's goal is up there. I mean, it was one of the best moments I've ever called. I was doing it for television. It was absolutely sensational. I just loved being in that moment. It was great. And actually, Manchester United have given me quite a few moments like that, because they're nothing if not entertaining.
The most entertaining side in the league?
Yeah, maybe not the most dynamic, Eric, but yeah. But certainly that Coventry game was absolutely bafflingly bonkers as well. So they've certainly given us some great moments. Actually, let's hope that they do that in the FA Cup final. We'd hope about that. Who do you expect to come fighting back next season?
Fighting back next season? Chelsea. After the way they finished, I think if they do the right thing and back Pochettino again, they need a number 9. They need a goalkeeper, as we mentioned, with Martinez, but I think you're going to see an improvement out of that side. You've seen it already. And I think with the structure that United are putting in place, it can't possibly be as bad as it was this season.
Yeah, they've got to get it right. Cannot keep slipping up like they have, and I think, you know, with the changes behind the scenes, I think decision making at the club's got to be a lot better. And just fighting for a top 4 spot at some point in the season, I think, you know, that put a few smiles on United faces.
I'm going to go Newcastle. I think they'll come roaring back next season. Eddie Howe, I think, has done a terrific job to stabilise that team. Despite the injuries, they don't have the depth of squad that some of the big boys had. I know everyone's had injuries, but they've certainly had significant ones. Lots of ACL problems that have really hampered their season. So I'm going to go for them. And predictions for next season's Premier League title.
Well, we're stood at the right place, aren't we?
They can't win it 5 times, can they?
Look,
can they?
The thing is, Sam, until Pep leaves the Premier League, it's going to be so difficult for any side. Whatever they do, how much they go out and spend, this lot, they're just going to keep winning.
Adrian Durham tells me Chelsea are going to win it next season.
Does he?
Yeah.
That's an even bolder prediction than my Villa shout. I'd love to say Arsenal, but I just feel like this is the one that got away, so I'm going to have to stick with these lot.
I'm going to go Arsenal. Why don't you let us know what you think about next season's Premier League? Thank you very much for watching Premier League All Access live from the Etihad Stadium after Manchester City were crowned champions again. And we'll be back on Thursday to bring you a full comprehensive preview to the FA Cup final. And don't forget, throughout the course of the summer, we will be here on this channel making sure you're up to date from the European Championships. Crookie and I are going to be doing a podcast every single day. European Championships Daily is going to be on this feed. Make sure you join us for that. We'll have all access from the Euros. We're looking forward to it. We hope you are too.